Mr. Scout. I know you're still weighing whether to return to Lumon. But the Mark I've come to know is happy.
My Outie's wife died a few years ago. Except the woman is Miss Casey.
Mark, your Annie said she's alive.
This is obscene.
I just want to be sure.
Do you know something about Gemma?
Mark, there'll be no honeymoon ending for you.
What is up, everybody? Jeremy Eisenfire here, and welcome to the channel. With Severance Season 2 finally hitting our screens after an extended hiatus, we now can look forward to the next chapter in Lumon Industries and our severed crew. And with Season 2 picking up right where Season 1 left off, we are now learning a little bit more about the aftermath of the Macrodad Uprising, the mini-rebellion that our innies got up to at the Season 1 finale. And it seems like their efforts actually did bear a little bit of fruit, as Lumon Industries had made some drastic reforms to the Severance program in order to make it a little bit more bearable, and of course to hopefully sway public opinion back in their favor, as the innies have become incredibly famous and have become the face of Severance reform in the outside world. And now we take a look ahead at Episode 2 in Season 2, airing this Friday at midnight. And it looks like this is going to be picking up right where Episode 1 left off, but it also looks like we're going to be getting a little bit of a flashback and finally learn a little bit about what happened during the 5-month time jump that occurred between Seasons 1 and 2. After all, the Season 2 premiere focused solely on the continuation of the innies storyline, and we haven't seen any of our outies yet at all this season, and I imagine Episode 2 is going to be diving much deeper into their story. The Episode 2 synopsis reads, Outie Mark contemplates the meaning of a message, while Lumon grapples with the fallout of the overtime contingency. And based on the broader Season 2 trailer as a whole, it looks like we can potentially suss out a few scenes that will most likely be in this upcoming episode, starting with this scene between Outie Mark and Milch in the outside world in what appears to be Mark's home, with Milch trying to persuade Outie Mark to return to work. Which of course is also giving us our very first look at Milch in the outside world. Up until now, we have only ever seen him inside the office on the severed floor as the manager. But I've often wondered what kind of person Milch would be on the outside world. Who is this man after all? Does he have a family at home? Does he have a life of his own? Or is Lumon the only thing he lives for? We did start to notice a slight change in Milch in the Season 2 premiere, albeit hard to tell if it is genuine or just part of a new plan, but a small part of him did almost genuinely seem a little bit remorseful for some of his Season 1 actions, including giving Outie Mark a personal apology for locking him inside the office like an animal. And with Milch, it's always incredibly tough to tell what exactly he is thinking and if he is being genuine or not. He is by far the most difficult character to read on the show, and is quickly becoming one of my favorite characters as well, as he is genuinely challenging me every time I see him on screen to figure out what his true motives are. And I certainly can't speak highly enough about the actor Trammell Tillman's performance as Mr. Milch. He is certainly one of the strongest actors on the entire series, and at times he's able to pull it off with little to no dialogue, just with simple facial expressions and body language, and often manages to shuffle between totally different emotions at the drop of a hat. One minute he's the corporate boss with a big smile on his face that is proud of his employees, and the next minute you can see the sinister look just come over him like he's ready to kill the entire office. Which is something I do find incredibly intriguing, to say the least. After all, I do really enjoy characters that genuinely challenge me as a viewer. And here, again, it seems like he is trying to convince Outie Mark to return to work, telling him that any Mark that he has come to know has been incredibly happy. And on one hand, you wonder why Lumon would want any of them back inside the office after what they did at the end of Season 1, but seeing as they are potentially now the famous faces of Severance reform, I imagine Lumon would view it as a massive PR win if they can get these faces back inside the office happily working once again. After all, Lumon does really enjoy their massive PR stunts. And as far as Outie Mark goes, I imagine he is probably trying to contemplate exactly what happened at the end of Season 1 as well, as he was left mostly in the dark for it as he was not activated at the time. But we also see a few scenes in the Season 2 trailer of Outie Mark speaking to his sister, talking about how Gemma could potentially still be alive, or at least according to what the innie version of Mark says at the end of Season 1. And as far as the message that Outie Mark is trying to decipher, could this potentially have been left by his innie version? Was the innie version of Mark trying to get some sort of message to his Outie version that Gemma was indeed alive when they did switch back over? Or could it potentially be that someone at the party heard the any version of Mark say she's alive just before switching over, leaving him to try and decipher what exactly that means? So if nothing else, I'm certainly expecting Outie Mark to be wrestling with the decision to go back to Lumon or not. But I imagine the lingering possibility of Gemma potentially being alive, even if the chance is ever so slight, will be way too strong for Mark to ignore and will most likely sway his decision to return to work. And then, of course, there's the added factor of Miss Cobel, and where she is going to fit into the rest of the story. After all, we do see a few scenes in the trailer of Outie Mark interacting with Mrs. Selvig, asking her exactly what is going on and what this was all about. The Season 2 premiere gave us a slight explanation as to why Mrs. Cobel was maneuvering herself so close to Mark's Outie, albeit I'm not 100% buying that story from Mr. Milch. I get the feeling that Miss Cobel was after something much different than simply his affections, and the throuple, as it's described. I imagine we could potentially see her picking up the pieces after she was let go from Lumon Industries, and we saw a slight scene in Season 1 that she certainly did not take that news well, all but destroying her massive shrine she had to Kier in her home. How exactly is Miss Cobel going to cope going forward, and what exactly is she going to do to try and win her position back, as I imagine she most certainly will try. And then, of course, we come to Helena, and what exactly she has been up to during these 5 months after the Macrodad uprising, and what could potentially ever sway her to return to Lumon after the events of the Season 1 finale. Now, of course, there have been some very interesting theories popping up in the wake of the Season 2 premiere regarding Helly, and whether or not this is actually her innie who did return to Lumon, or if it was potentially Helena in disguise. After all, the innie version of Helly when she returns to Lumon, or what we think is the innie version of Helly, was very reluctant to tell any of her fellow co-workers what she really saw on the outside world. Now, was this potentially just simple fear that her co-workers may distrust her if they find out that she is in fact an Egan and the daughter of the CEO? Or could it potentially be a little bit more than that, and this maybe is the real Helena from the outside who has been sent in undercover? And if so, why exactly was she sent in, and what exactly is her ultimate objective in spying on the severed floor? We do see an interesting shot in the Season 2 trailer of Miss Cobel speaking with the Helena version of Helly, referring to the severed workers, stating that you do not value them, but in fact you fear them, with Helena, of course, denying this. And could the conversation between the two ultimately sway Helena's decision to return to Lumon for whatever reason? Considering all the lives of the Outies, I would imagine Helena would probably be the most reluctant to return to Lumon after the events of Season 1, so whatever sways her decision in the long run must have been pretty important. Or could it potentially be that she is just so devoted to the company that she wants to continue this PR stunt of hers? And then, of course, we have Irving, and what exactly he has been up to during this 5-month stretch. And out of all of the innies who did successfully make it to the outside world, there's probably the least amount of footage in the Season 2 trailer of Irving, so it's really hard to tell exactly what is going to be going on with his character and what ultimately swayed him to return. One thing we did learn about the Outie version of Irving, however, at the end of Season 1, was that he had apparently been researching Lumon for quite some time, and specifically severed employees of Lumon, even going so far as to find out where some of them live, which is ultimately how he managed to track down Bert on the outside world. And for whatever reason, Irving seems to be tied to this mysterious hallway that Miss Casey gets sent to at the end of Season 1 as well, the one that seems to be the testing facility, of which we got a small glimpse of at the end of last week's episode, and what appears to be some kind of connection between the work that MDR is doing and that mysterious floor, which could potentially be the same floor that Petey warned us about in Season 1 that holds severed employees that never end up leaving Lumon, which could potentially be exactly what is happening to Miss Casey. But why exactly is Irving dreaming or having visions of this hallway over and over again, and what exactly is his connection to it? Which is something we can hopefully get a glimpse of in Episode 2 and maybe learn why he felt compelled to paint this over and over again, and ultimately why he chose to return to Lumon after all. But last, and certainly not least, we have Dylan, and what ultimately made him choose to return to Lumon as well. Midway through Season 1, we found out that Dylan actually has a family on the outside, a wife and multiple children. A revelation that he had a tough time coming to grips with, knowing that his innie version would never be able to see his family ever again, or even learn their names. And unlike the rest of his co-workers, Dylan unfortunately didn't get to see the outside world, as he was the one who stayed behind at Lumon and sacrificed himself in order to activate the overtime contingency, and in a way was the quiet MVP of the first season, or at the very least of the finale. Overall, it seems like Episode 2 is going to be focusing predominantly on the Outie versions, just as Episode 1 focused solely on the innies. And according to the Episode 2 synopsis, which is titled, Goodbye, Miss Cobel, we are also going to get a glimpse at Lumon and their direct response to the Macrodad uprising, and I imagine some of the events that ultimately led to them making some changes to the Severance program to make it seem more appealing. And then, of course, we also got that one scene in the Season 2 trailer of what appears to be one of the board members on Lumon Industries, stating that the work that they are doing there will be known as some of the most important in human history. So it certainly seems whatever time and effort they are devoting to the MDR program is going to be pretty significant and important to the overall mission of the company. But if nothing else, it looks like we are finally going to get a look at the Audie's version and whatever happened during the 5-month period that ultimately led to them eventually returning to work. And of course, the initial reaction from Lumon to the Macrodad uprising. So if nothing else, hopefully we have a few answers on the horizon. But that is going to do it for our preview and predictions for Season 2, Episode 2, Goodbye, Miss Cobel. Severance has certainly been off to a phenomenal start so far, and even giving the extended hiatus between Seasons 1 and 2, it still feels like the show has not missed a beat. So definitely leave your thoughts and predictions for Episode 2 down below. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like on your way out and subscribe to stay up to date on all of our upcoming Severed content, as we'll be doing weekly reviews and live discussions all season. And as always, keep those tinfoil hats on, folks, and I will see you on the next one.
Their work will be remembered as one of the greatest moments of this planet.
Goodbye, Marcus.
Wait!